Washington, D.C. is a den of thieves and liars, a fact that has never been so clear as it is now. In President Trump's darkest hour in early January, vultures from the swamp who call themselves Republicans swept in to see him removed from power for good. This culminated in a phony impeachment vote that saw House Republicans turn against him. The easiest and most natural RINO targets for us this November are those that went against Trump in this hour. They dropped all pretense of working with Trump and attempting to appease his voters in order to attempt to get rid of him once and for all. Many have retired. Kinzinger, Upton, Katko, Gonzalez. All retired and not worth spending a single additional second talking about. Unfortunately, we still have to deal with the other six. Valadao, Meyer, Rice, Butler, Newhouse, Cheney. This is my fourth series to premiere, RINO Roundup, dealing with bad incumbents facing serious primary battles. You're watching the Yankee Perspective. It is finally time to talk about the impeachment Republicans. Enjoy. The first of the six representatives we will cover today, albeit briefly, is David Valadao. He voted to impeach, but has stayed silent overall and represents a Biden plus 10 district that is being transformed into a Biden plus 13 one. He is by no means a good Republican, but he is one we can tolerate. Valadao has received no serious primary challenger and is by far the likeliest of any of these candidates to win his primary and return to Congress. I wouldn't be crushed if Valadao lost to a Democrat, but trying to primary him really is not realistic in this specific case. Tom Rice is the representative of South Carolina's 7th Congressional District, a district that was established in 2013, making him the only representative of this relatively new seat. He is likely the strangest one of this bunch. His voting record on the issues has been surprisingly positive in the past for the most part. In 2019, Rice voted against the Further Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2020, and in the same year, he voted against the Consolidated Appropriations Act. Rice voted again to repeal the authorization of the use of military force in Iraq. Rice supported Trump's withdrawal from Syria and Afghanistan, just like Ralph Norman and Jeff Duncan, two of the only America First patriot politicians in South Carolina. The problem with Rice arises on January 6th of 2021. Oddly enough, Rice actually voted to object to the results of the 2020 election, unlike the other impeachment voters. Then, in a move that almost nobody expected, Rice voted to impeach outgoing President Donald Trump. An above-average vote of a congressman up until that point has now been consumed by Trump derangement syndrome, and has made a name for himself, and for all the wrong reasons. Fortunately, Rice seems dead on arrival, as his campaign and rhetoric has devolved into Liz Cheney-tier talking points about Trump in January 6th. Recently, Rice, despite being down by a massive margin, has come to make demands of Donald Trump because he believes himself to be important enough for Trump to listen to him. A recent Trafalgar poll has shown Rice losing to primary challenger Russell Fry, 39-23. Fry is a conservative state representative who should have all the America First aspects of Tom Rice while also not being a backstabber. Thank God Graham Allen, aka Rant Nation, dropped out of this race. We have previously covered Joe Kent on this channel. His opponent, Jamie Herrera Butler, is one of the worst Republicans in Congress. 57% rating from Numbers USA, has voted for amnesty like 10 billion times. She voted to hold Steve Bannon in contempt of Congress. She opposed Trump's travel ban from Muslim countries vociferously. Joe Kent, despite some recent trouble in paradise, is still one of the best candidates we have in this entire cycle. Washington's primary system there is very difficult because it'll likely result in a Kent versus Butler matchup in the general, with many Democrats likely to cross over and vote for Butler over America First candidate Joe Kent. It's going to be an uphill battle for him. I know he watched my first video on him, and he seems like a great guy. Many of you have commented asking for a follow-up video on Joe Kent in the aftermath of his statements about inclusive populism, which I believe to be extremely poorly worded comments, but yes, overall, I do still support Joe Kent. Now, it is time to cover the seat next door. Washington's 4th Congressional District is by far the most conservative district in the state. It has a PVI of R+25, so it is a shame that the representative of this district, Dan Newhouse, votes like he is in a D+10 district instead. Dan Newhouse has been one of the biggest cheerleaders for amnesty in the GOP caucus. He has called for DACA numerous times. He was among 9 Republicans to vote for amnesty for Dreamers in 2021. Newhouse, along with Jamie Herrera Butler, voted to restrict Trump's withdrawal from Afghanistan. Dan Newhouse has received a 46% from Numbers USA for his voting record during this Congress. Newhouse has voted for all of the Ukraine handout bills. In 2015, Newhouse was one of 60 Republicans voting to uphold President Barack Obama's 2014 executive order banning federal contractors from making hiring decisions that discriminate based on sexual orientation or gender identity. Fortunately, Newhouse does have an excellent America First challenger in Lauren Culp. Culp was the gubernatorial nominee in 2020 against Jay Inslee and has name recognition statewide and a Trump endorsement. Culp will work with Joe Kent, and Washington's congressional delegation will hopefully add Reagan Dunn to the mix, making it all but perfect. Washington, unfortunately, isn't the only state with 2 impeachment Republicans within it. Michigan joins them in the Council of Cringe as well. Michigan is no stranger to RINOs, whether they be in the state legislature or in the halls of Congress. They seem to infest most levels of Michigan's government. The dean of the Michigan House delegation, who has been there since 1987, Fred Upton, has always been a raging RINO and is now thankfully retiring. As atrocious as Upton was, at least he never attempted to cover it up. He was an open never Trumper in 2016 and was very wishy-washy towards Trump in 2020. The same cannot be said in one district over with freshman Peter Meyer. His district got bluer in redistricting, but that is not a good enough reason to keep him. Meyer is ultimately a liability for the Republicans. He's Adam Kinzinger Jr. He helped The Atlantic write an article trashing his party, saying they attacked the foundations of democracy for voting against certifying the election results. This propaganda, done for a left-wing rag, portrayed Meyer glowingly and attacked every other Republican except for his fellow impeachment Republicans. Meyer was the only freshman Republican to vote to impeach, and the only freshman in history to vote to impeach a member of his own party. The only reason Meyer won his seat was because of Trump, Meyer's family name, and his opposition to Justin Amish's support for Trump's first impeachment. Meyer promptly betrayed Trump, and ever since has been palling around with Adam Kinzinger and going on his podcast to bash Trump and his supporters. Meyer drafted a bill with Democrat Jason Crow to try and let 40,000 more Afghans into the country. Meyer also voted to hold Steve Bannon in contempt of Congress. Yes, Trump lost this district by around 8 to 9 points, yet John James only lost it by 3. Trump is a terrible fit for this district, but that doesn't mean an optical, America First Republican such as Mike Garcia can't win this district. In comes John Gibbs, a former HUD official in the Trump administration. Basement Caucus Electabros trash Gibbs regularly because of some Facebook boomer posts in 2016. Gibbs is a Mark Robinson type, saying similar things in the past and refusing to back down from them. He will win this district, make no mistake. If Gibbs beats Meyer and holds the seat, we will have a fantastic candidate to run for Senate statewide in 2024. Finally, we have reached the mother of all neocons and the most notable impeachment Republican, none other than Liz Cheney of Wyoming at large. Liz Cheney is the daughter of hunting enthusiast Dick Cheney, of course, and she is the biggest neoconservative ever. She actually gets a hard-on for every drone strike that occurs in a Middle Eastern country. She was one of the main roadblocks in Trump's withdrawal from Afghanistan. Cheney, evidently sick about LARPing as a Trump loyalist, decided to cast him off entirely after January 6th and went completely and utterly off the rails together with her boyfriend Adam Kinzinger. The two of them are on Nancy Pelosi's committee because they are her lapdogs. Her antics have been covered to death by absolutely everyone, and she was even censured along with Adam Kinzinger as a result. She was removed from her position as the number 3 House Republican after even Kevin McCarthy got sick of her nonsense. She was actually removed from the party by the Wyoming GOP, and that's funny because here in South Dakota they'd celebrate her for voting to impeach. There is not much more that needs to be said about her. Her challenger, who actually did work for her at one point and supported her at one point, Harriet Hageman, is Trump endorsed, and she will almost certainly win the primary. Estimates have Cheney at about 25 or 20%, which is pathetic for an incumbent. While there are definitely questions about Hageman, no conservative can deny that she will be better than Liz Cheney. She will, at minimum, be able to learn Cheney's lesson and stay in line. Trump's hold over the Republican Party is directly at stake in these elections. If he can't remove the lion's share of these traitors from the party, then his days as its leader are numbered. If we want the Republican Party to continue to support America First policies and not re-embrace the losing establishment, these 6 RINOs have to be rounded up and herded out of Washington. On June 14th, Tom Rice. On August 2nd, Dan Newhouse, Jamie Herrera Butler, and Peter Meyer. On August 16th, Liz Cheney. Vote for their challengers: Russell Fry, Lauren Culp, Joe Kent, John Gibbs, and Harriet Hageman. This has been the Yankee Perspective. Take care now.